So the hottest thing in the street right now is Chainsaw Man. The titular manga turned anime about a man who can pull a string in his heart and become, well, a Chainsaw Man. Everybody loves Denji, said Chainsaw Man, because his motivations are, well, bread and boobs. But Denji is much more than a Chainsaw Man. He is a hybrid. And hybrid is a race of devils within the confines of Chainsaw Man. And while hybrids are technically exceedingly rare and also technically shouldn't exist for some reasons we'll get into in a second, there actually is more hybrids in Chainsaw Man than just Denji. In fact, there's been a grand total of 8 in the entire timeline of Chainsaw Man. But what really is a hybrid? How do you get one? What are their abilities? How do you kill them? And most importantly, what's every single hybrid that's ever existed, and how do they stack up against each other in terms of strength? We're gonna answer all those questions and more in a second, but please guys, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. It's important to note here that we are going to be wandering into spoiler territory. I'm going to try and stay as far out of spoiler territory as possible, but we are going to be talking about people who don't appear until much further than the anime currently is. And don't worry, if we're about to talk spoilers, I will give you a warning. Before we talk about every single hybrid and where they stack up in terms of power against each other, we should talk about just what hybrids are. See, hybrids in the manga have been referred to as devil humans. See, hybrids are actually just the name that we give to the combinations of humans and devils. Technically, within the confines of the Chainsaw Man universe, the name for hybrids does not exist. And technically, hybrids themselves also should not exist. But we'll talk about why the name and hybrids shouldn't exist in a little bit. First, I just want to talk about what hybrids are. You see, I've already done a whole video talking about all the different kinds of devils and how they differ from each other. And if you've seen that video, you understand that if a devil takes over a corpse, they will become a fiend. And fiends can be found out by their characteristic heads, like Power's horns. But Denji and all the other hybrids don't have characteristic heads. When they're not in their devil form, they just look like a human. However, the creation of a hybrid is incredibly rare. And the only way we currently know to make a hybrid is via a contract. See, contracts in Chainsaw Man are very important. Humans can make contracts with devils, while fiends cannot. See, a contract is usually built around a sacrifice, like Aki's contract with the Fox Devil that allows him to summon the Fox Devil to his location and borrow its power if he gives the Fox Devil a little part of his body. In essence, becoming a hybrid works in much the same way. If we take Denji for an example, Denji had a contract with Pochita that stated if he ever died, he wanted Pochita to take his body. Therefore, when Denji is basically all but killed, Pochita takes over his body and the contract is fulfilled, and thus, instead of a fiend, a hybrid is made. The biggest difference between a fiend and a hybrid outside of the characteristic head is that a hybrid retains the human consciousness, while a fiend takes on the consciousness of the demon that took over the corpse. On top of this, hybrids are able to fully transform into a devil form, while fiends can only basically use a shadow of the power that they used to be able to do as a devil. And once again, unlike fiends, hybrids can still make contracts with devils or humans, unlike fiends. And lastly, fiends can die, while hybrids technically never really can die. See, the combination of a devil and a human is a very powerful thing, especially if done under a contract. A hybrid with an adequate source of blood can revive from the death or regenerate basically anything. It doesn't matter if you decapitate a hybrid and take their head away from their body. If enough blood goes into that mouth or the body, they'll be fine. So the answer to how do you kill a hybrid is you don't, which is why they're so important in Chainsaw Man. At least 4 of them are. You see, I said earlier that there is 8 known hybrids in the entirety of Chainsaw Man, and that's because there is. In fact, they all once collaborated in a little thing known as Special Division 5. If Tokyo Special Division 5 sounds familiar to you, that's because Denji and Power operate on Tokyo Special Division 4. Special Division 5 is brought into action much later in the manga during the Control Devil arc. This is a team led by Makima that has every single hybrid outside of Denji on it. And while there's 3 hybrids on this team whose name and abilities we very much know, there's also 4 unnamed hybrids. And those are the hybrids we're going to be talking about first. You see, these hybrids, and in fact all hybrids outside of Denji, are referred to as weapons humans, because all 7 of the hybrids outside of Denji are hybrids of weapons. Though one could argue a chainsaw is also a weapon in the right hands. These 4 unnamed hybrids are the flamethrower, spear, longsword, and whip hybrids. And they, just like Denji and all hybrids, have a bodily movement they have to do to activate a devil transformation that makes them look like the weapon they're named after. And there's not a huge amount to say about them. They can just turn into their respective weapons. The only thing to really say about them is a point you can make about the majority of hybrids. See, these unnamed hybrids and the majority of hybrids are able to transform their arms, upper body, and head into whatever they're named after, meaning that usually the legs and lower body retain a human appearance. With an innate mastery of becoming a hybrid, aka the better you get at it, you're able to transform your legs into things like chainsaws. And the real peek into the power of these 4 is the fact that they can't do that. Now, is that a matter of convenience legs, or a matter of the fact that they can't do it, because why would you want guns for legs? Unfortunately, we don't have the answer to that. But let's go ahead and get to the people whose abilities we know and understand. You see, the beauty of a hybrid is that usually because they retain their human consciousness, they're really not all that bad. Unfortunately, that's not the case for the first entry on this list, Katana Man. You see, Katana Man was a human who merged with the Katana Devil. I'm sure you could have guessed that. See, Katana Man is the antagonist for the Katana Man arc, and he's got beef with Denji because the mob boss that Denji killed when he first became a Chainsaw Man was Katana Man's grandfather. You see, Katana Man, and by the way, we don't know his real name, at one point created a contract with a girl named Akane, stating that when he dies, he wants his heart replaced with the heart of the Katana Devil, and thus at his death, when he has his heart replaced with the Katana Devil, a contract is completed, and thus he becomes a hybrid. You see, Katana Man, even though he's technically gonna be the weakest known entry on this list, is anything but weak. And his hybrid transformation is, it's intense. So you know how Denji pulls the ripcord that's Vegeta's tail from his chest? In order to undergo his transformation, Katana Man has to remove his left hand to reveal the katana that's under it. And it's at this point that he becomes his devil form, which creates katanas from both of his hands and one from his face. And Katana Man's strength in this form is no joke. His katanas are able to cut through solid walls. His katanas are even strong enough to cut the flesh of the Fox Devil, one of the strongest devils on Earth. But Katana Man's true strength comes from his speed, specifically the speed of his katanas. See, Katana Man has an ability called Sword Draw Dash, which is a bit like Zenitsu's Thunderclap and Flash. It's based off Iai Jutsu, which is the ancient Japanese fighting style of pulling your sword from its hilt in a fast motion. You see, Katana Man uses this technique very similarly to how Zenitsu uses it. Crouches his body down and gets it ready to lunge at an opponent. He then uses his incredible speed to flash past his opponents and slice them as he goes. And he does this faster than the human eye can track, appearing to teleport around the room. Unlike with Zenitsu's Thunderclap and Flash, he can do this multiple times with no repercussions. And these dashes are strong enough to sever limbs or cut people in half. And truly the greatest part of this ability is that it leans on the trope of having a wound open moments after a slash has been completed. That is to say that after the Katana Man slashes you with this technique, there'll be a couple seconds until the wounds appear on you. However, this also applies to him. Since Katana Man is just moving very quickly, if I were to hypothetically cut him as he was cutting me, after he stops moving, it also takes a couple of seconds for the wound to appear on him. So it's a lot like the moment in old movies where two samurai slash each other and both sheathe their swords before one of them falls down. And while all of this sounds very promising and strong, Katana Man has a weakness that only he has, at least amongst the hybrids. After going in and then out of his hybrid form, Katana Man has a cooldown, meaning that he won't be able to enter his hybrid form again for a certain amount of time. He is the only hybrid with this problem, because the rest of them can go in and out of hybrid form as long as they have enough blood. But you could hook Katana Man up to 3 IVs simultaneously and he would still have a cooldown, which is why he's the lowest on the list. The next entry on the list is Lady Reese, also known as the Bomb Devil, and she's a hybrid from the Soviet Union. Yes, it still exists in the world of Chainsaw Man. She, like Katana Man, also wants the chainsaw heart, and she is the antagonist of the Bomb Girl arc. They do a really good job naming the arcs here. Reese probably has my favorite hybrid transformation in the entirety of the show. Like, a ripcord in your chest is cool, but Reese pulls a grenade pin out of her neck, which is just sick. But not only does she pull a grenade pin out of her neck, after pulling the grenade pin out of her neck, she explodes. And out of that explosion comes her hybrid form, which looks more like a xenomorph than anything. But that's not even technically the only way she can transform. See, Reese can do the explosion that decapitates her, by the way, and then she can have her decapitated body catch her head. And like, if this is your first time watching a girl blow herself up and catch her own decapitated head, you'd be a bit distracted. Lucky for her, that's exactly what this is meant to do. Because once she catches you lacking looking at her decapitated head in her arms, she'll throw her head at you and it will explode. And then from said exploded head, she will then turn into her hybrid form. But it doesn't end there, because she can also control the headless body remotely. And did you guess that the headless body's also a bomb? You didn't? Well, you should have. So while you're trying to fight off her hybrid form, which has a bomb for a head and an apron made of TNT, she can remotely control a headless bomb body to hit you from behind. And something about being able to survive numerous explosions that decapitate you somehow boosted her durability to a superhuman level. Without spoiling anything, there's a fiend out there known as the Violence Fiend, and the Violence Fiend is so strong it's forced to wear a mask that dispenses poison to make it weaker. And he's so powerful that when his kicks are blocked, it shatters the ground in the buildings around them. So like, he's not even aiming at the ground or the buildings. If they're just blocked nearby, things get destroyed. And you know who was blocking these attacks? Freeze! But if durability wasn't enough for you, guess what the Bomb Devil can do? Just create explosions wherever she wants, and these explosions can level buildings, destroy cars, hurt Denji in his hybrid form, which is saying something, and she doesn't have to worry about danger close because her explosions quite literally cannot hurt her unless she wants them to. What does that mean? You'll find out eventually. But don't worry, she also has Bakugo's ability of explosive propulsion, meaning that she can use controlled explosions from the bottom of her feet and hands to fly around. And if she can control explosions with her hands and her feet, you better believe she can also add these explosions onto the end of her punches and kicks. But if she wants to play a longer game, Riz can pull off any part of her body and leave it somewhere as a remote bomb. Let's say she knows you're gonna walk through a door, she can pull off her arm, nail it next to said door, and explode it whenever she needs to. What's great about this for her though is that most hybrids or devils, if they lose a limb, will have to drink blood in order to grow said limb back. But if Riz pulls off a part of her body to use as a remote bomb, it just instantly regenerates. So, you know, limitless time bombs. But she does have like just a massive weakness. If she gets wet, she can't use her explosions. She has the Wicked Witch of the West weakness. Say that 5 times fast, I dare you. But you know who doesn't have a weakness to water? The next entry on our list, I think it's Quan Chi. I've never heard it said out loud. Let's hope, because if Dorothy hears me whitewashing a Chinese name, I'm sleeping outside. Quan Chi is a hybrid from China. You see, Quan Chi is very high on this list because Quan Chi is a private devil hunter and is actually referred to as one of the first devil hunters. In fact, her nickname is quite literally First Devil Hunter. And she's also canonically a lesbian, so good job, Chainsaw Man. She pops up in the International Assassins arc, so an arc not named after the antagonist. Good job. And her hybrid transformation makes me the most uncomfortable. You see, Quan Chi wears an eye patch, and that's for 2 reasons. 1, to look badass, and 2, to cover up the arrow in her eye. See, when Quan Chi pulls the arrow in her right eye, she undergoes her hybrid transformation. And her hybrid transformation is sick. You see, Quan Chi has the Crossbow Demon, and while you would assume the Crossbow Demon is significantly weaker than the Bomb Demon, you'd be wrong. See, when Quan Chi undergoes her hybrid transformation, her entire neck becomes covered with arrows. Her head becomes a crossbow holding 3 crossbow bolts, and both of her hands become crossbows. Quan Chi, as far as we know, cannot turn her feet into crossbows though. Quan Chi is probably my favorite character in the entirety of Chainsaw Man. She is a badass, pragmatic, powerful, straight to the point woman who has a harem of fiends. But outside of just looking incredibly cool, she's also incredibly powerful. Quan Chi has been shown to be able to block strikes that are powerful enough to knock out the likes of Aki and Angel. Mind you, Angel is the angel devil. So he's a devil created by the fear of angels. And he's considered the 2nd strongest devil hunter on Squad 4. But Quan Chi doesn't even need to transform to be superhumanly powerful. Quan Chi is shown to be able to move faster than the eye can pick up outside of her transformation, just in regular old human form. But once Quan Chi does undergo her hybrid transformation, her crossbow arms become very effective. See, with her crossbow arms, Quan Chi is obviously able to shoot crossbow bolts. But Quan Chi is able to shoot more than one crossbow bolt at a time. She can shoot them out in a buckshot-like pattern to wipe out enemies that are up close. And that's if she even needs to use her arrows, because she's considered one of the best hand-to-hand combatants on Earth. And honestly, more often than not, she ends up just using the 3 swords she has on her back, which she can use to cut through crowds of people without slowing down. In fact, the only thing that slows her down when she's slicing through devils and humans and dolls is when her swords break. But alas, all of these hybrids, even Quan Chi, pale in comparison to our main character, Denji. Denji is by far and away the strongest hybrid on Earth. In fact, he's the only hybrid we've ever seen who's able to make their lower half their devil form. And this is referred to as his devil form and not his hybrid form. Now, the events around Denji entering this devil form are spoilers and we won't get into it. But just know in this form, Pochita takes on the true form of the Chainsaw Devil. And in this form, Pochita has 100% control. It's also important to note that in this form, Denji wears his intestines around his neck like a scarf. Why? Chainsaw Man. See, Denji's the hybrid we've spent the most time with, and therefore he's the hybrid we understand the best. See, Denji's transformations are largely dependent on how much blood he has, because we know that when Denji undergoes these transformations, he loses a lot of blood, because the chainsaws cut him as well. When Denji pulls the ripcord in his chest and he has enough blood, he undergoes a full transformation. The big old chainsaw head, the chainsaw hands, all of that. But when Denji doesn't have enough blood and he pulls his ripcord, his chainsaw only comes out a little bit. In this form, he looks closer to Vegeta than his actual transformation. Denji Denji is what we like to call built different. See, in our most recent episode of Chainsaw Man, we actually saw Denji catch a car and throw it back at the Bat Demon. And that's only 3 episodes into the anime. Denji goes significantly further off the rails than that. Denji, for some reason or another that I'm not about to get into, gets launched into space. Denji doesn't want to be lost in space because technically he's immortal, so he'll just keep dying and resuscitating. So instead of being lost in space, Denji rips his heart out of his chest and throws it through the Earth's atmosphere back to Earth. Denji also has an insane amount of endurance. He once fought for 3 straight days. It's actually stated that as long as Denji has blood going into him, he could technically fight forever. And I know we talked about a hybrid manifestation of the lower body and how it's only ever been seen with Denji. The way Denji uses it is he manifests mini chainsaws on the bottom of his feet that allow him to grip onto walls and climb up. But we've seen Denji get even more creative than this. See, Denji is able to take the chains off of his chainsaws and use them in a whip-like fashion. He can then use these chains to entangle enemies and pull them closer to it. On top of this, Denji has a 6th sense for figuring out the weakness of his opponents. While fighting his opponents, his battle IQ proves itself to be actually rather high, and he's usually able to quickly determine what the weakness of an opponent would be and exploit it. Not to mention, like every other hybrid, it doesn't matter how badly you destroy his body, as long as you pull the ripcord in his chest, he will be revived. And that's it. All of the hybrids in Chainsaw Man ranked and explained. Did you like this deeper dive into Chainsaw Man? Do you want me to talk more about Chainsaw Man? Do you have any specific topics from Chainsaw Man you want me to talk about? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Ugh, imagine pulling an arrow out of your eye every time you need to transform.